Hi, everyone. I'm Bob Bowman, Editor-in-Chief of Supply Chain Brain. I want to welcome you to this presentation on mastering last mile delivery through fleet diversification, presented by FRAYT. One quick reminder, there will be an audience question and answer session at the end of this presentation. Audience members are encouraged to submit their questions at any time during the presentation by clicking on that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Now, in today's high-risk world, businesses need to understand the nitty-gritty of fleet diversification to put themselves at the forefront of last-mile delivery efficiency. So today, we're going to unravel the benefits of choosing the right partners and illuminate the crucial role of major carriers in this process. We'll learn how collaboration with last-mile providers will accelerate your success, and we'll explore the abundant pros of fleet augmentation. So let's take a look at the topics that we'll be covering today. The discussion is going to follow these four main themes: the transformative power of fleet diversification, the strategic role of major carriers in enhancing delivery speed, how to build beneficial collaborations with last-mile partners, and the benefits of fleet augmentation in creating a flexible and efficient delivery system. With that, I want to introduce our speakers for today. Ryan Sullivan is Vice President with FRAYT. He's an experienced leader who has helped drive revenue and savings for thousands of companies in the supply chain. Ben Emmerich is CEO and founder of Tusk Logistics. Ben is a parcel industry visionary with a background at Google Shopping and Shippo. Bart DeMonk is a strategic and supply chain advisor with more than 30 years of experience in logistics and the supply chain. He's the former VP of Research at Gartner and most recently served as Chief Industry Officer at Project 44. And Rob Davis is president of Diacon Logistics, a third-party logistics provider that specializes in transportation, warehousing, and distribution. Prior to joining Diacon, Rob held senior leadership positions at several other logistics companies, including DHL, UPS, and FedEx. So let's hear from each of the panelists now about why they're here today with us and the value that each one of them is going to bring to the presentation. Ryan?
Thanks, Bob. Happy to be here. I'm Ryan Sullivan. I lead sales at FRAYT. I've been a startup founder and sales leader in 3 supply chain tech startups over the last decade and an advisor at the company Warehouse. So, I'm very bullish on the fact that the way we transport products in the modern world is going to change. Avid final mile user, and when my home delivery food bills outweighed how much money I was making, I decided to join the FRAYT team and leverage my supply chain tech sales skills to help pay them off. Happy to be here today.
All right, Rob Davis, President and CEO of Diacon Logistics, also recently nominated as the President of the National Home Delivery Association, which is particularly focused on big and bulky final mile deliveries within the U.S. and Puerto Rico. So we have quite a few members there. We just finished our annual forum, and it's been a pleasure. And during my tenure working with Diacon, I've been with the company since 2013. And president over the last several years, we've expanded into a number of markets, including opening up a new corporate campus down in Austin, Texas. We're really excited about. So looking forward to participating in this conference and this webinar today, and hearing some of the questions and wisdom from folks on the call.
Well, welcome everyone. This is Bart DeMonk. My background, I've been on the operations as well as on the shipper side in last mile, as well as research last mile extensively during my time at Gartner. I will say, and we'll discuss that during this webinar, is that last mile has become so complex. And my role is not to just advise companies in this space, service providers and technology providers, but also provide education to really show how companies should think about last mile and what they can do to minimize risk and really improve the efficiency of their organization.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ben Emmerich. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Tusk Logistics. Tusk is a new type of shipping network that's underpinned by top-tier regional carriers nationwide. So we help shippers lower their costs with reliable service, and we provide proactive support and real-time visibility on every parcel. So looking forward to joining the team here to talk about all things last mile delivery, whether it's small parcel, whether it's big and bulky. I'm really excited to have this conversation today.
Well, as you can see, audience, we have a great panel of seasoned experts to guide us through this topic today of mastering last mile delivery through fleet diversification. So let's move into the panel discussion where I get to query these guys about their views on this very important topic. And let's talk about the current state to start out with of last mile fulfillment for carriers, for 3PLs, and brokers. From your perspective, what are some of the top challenges in last mile fulfillment right now? Ryan, let me start with you.
Sure. So, I mean, I think the dynamics of customer expectations have really changed, whether that is the end customer receiving the products or the retailer or e-commerce company that is ultimately facilitating that transportation. So on the delivery side, we see tons of variability in the types of documentation and how we want products delivered. Are we taking pictures of, is it a proof of delivery picture or an e-signature? Is it a something that is a threshold delivery that's going into somebody's home? Do they have to be there for it? Are there gate codes? So just the complexity of how products get delivered and what those expectations are has changed dramatically. Additionally, I think there's really a big downstream impact from middle mile that adds complexity to final mile. So, you know, we've talked a lot in the market in the last few years about visibility, but if you don't have a vendor set that's able to not only provide you visibility, but be nimble and agile enough to act upon that, it's nice to know that there's a problem, but it's a very hard problem to solve. So, I mean, I think those are some of the key challenges. The other area that I've seen more and more recently is brand extension. You know, final mile is an expensive portion of the supply chain. So with that level of investment, the companies that are investing in these final mile deliveries need to have a customer experience that is similar to when you used to go to the grocery store and the clerk smiled at you and, you know, gave you an experience that you were happy about. I think that's what many companies are struggling to replicate, is a delivery experience that wows the customer and gives them that same brand extension and feeling as though the vendor is a representative of their company.
Thanks, Ryan. Interesting that the incredibly complex supply chains we see today, from raw materials through manufacturing, distribution, logistics, the entire thing all laid out, it can all break down in the last mile if it's not done properly. So this is a very crucial issue that we're talking about today. Now, these trends do create a very dynamic environment for logistics professionals. What are some of the signs that a company should consider when connecting with last mile partners to address these challenges? Let me ask Ben first on that one.
Yeah, it's a great question, Bob. I would say the thing that an operation should look at first is their cost, to be blunt. And they will have a strong sense for just looking at the numbers where their spend is going. And after they look at the actual cost, they should look at the nature of their volume. And what I mean by the nature of their volume is they should be mapping cost to parcel characteristics. And so one thing that we help a lot of our shippers with is small optimizations they can do in the short term to reduce costs on shipments. For example, any parcel over a certain pound break gets rated at the next pound break up. So if you have a 3.1 pound parcel, is there something small you could do to make sure that that parcel is below 3 pounds so that it doesn't get rated as a 4-pound parcel? Those are the small kind of low-hanging fruit that we help our shippers to optimize for. And then what we do is we go into the building, we look at their tech, and then we help them to activate with Tusk in a way that adds no incremental load to their operations team and gives them access to our network of regionals so that they can save money on every parcel.
Rob, what do you think are some of these considerations that companies should think about as they're partnering with last mile providers?
Yeah. So one thing, and I kind of take a specific look at it, particularly with big and bulky. So we just partnered with Armstrong Associates to do a study and looked at what is the size of that market, and it's estimated to grow from $12 billion to $16 billion by 2025. So if you look at the growth of where that's going, and then look at your specific needs as well, what I like to try to say and think about is matching up and have somebody that's equally yoked with what your needs are, right? If you have a $10 million spend, you probably don't want to put that with a company that's $15 million, right? If you go with a $6 billion company, equally, you're probably not going to get maybe as much attention as you want to. You got to kind of think about what that looks like. But there's going to be so many different needs for solutions. I think there's such a focus for a period of time of get it to me now, get it to me now, get it to me now. I'm personally in the camp that I don't think time is the top priority. I think solutions and capabilities to get it done right, it is far exceeds anything on the time perspective. So you have to kind of allocate and look at who are the partners that are able to get it to you in that fashion, and then so many different solutions and mechanisms to be able to really build a network that's going to be suitable for your specific needs.
Yeah, and it has been said that more important than time is predictability and visibility on the part of the receiver. They want to know when their delivery is coming, where it is at any given point, much more than they care about whether it shows up in an hour or 2 hours or a day, right?
Yep, exactly. And then and the one thing, other thing I would add to that is consideration of if you're going into the house, who are you sending into the house? This is very different from the shopping experience of going into the store, or the trends have just been compounded, right, of people shopping online, and so many times now we're the only representatives that these people are going to see from that brand. So what does that brand experience look like? What do they see pulling up to their house? Who are the people that are going into their house? Are they background checked? Are they qualified? What kind of soft skills do they have? What kind of observation skills do they have to be able to be aware of other customer needs?
Well, I think we've established that the last mile space has become incredibly complex. I'm wondering what are some of the options, though, that are in the market out there for final mile delivery today, some of the pros, some of the cons of each. Bart, let me start with you.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Bob. And just to put that a little bit into perspective, right? We talked about complexity, but you got to remember, some people still think that last mile only affects the consumer, right? And the fact that it was only retailers. I spent 10 years with PepsiCo, and I will tell you back then, our last mile was just bringing some Fritos and Pepsis to a 7-Eleven. Now, every company is a retailer. Every company you can buy from directly. So that's become a lot bigger problem. The other part is that, we have all these different ways to fulfill orders. 10 years ago, you would order something, either you go buy it in the store or they ship it to you by UPS or FedEx. Now we've got everything being shipped from small to large to heavy to refrigerator. And then we keep coming up with these new things, right? We heard about BOPIS and BOPAC, and we're doing lockers. And now we even hear about drones doing deliveries. And if that isn't enough complexity, Bob, then we're hearing about risk around strikes, right? Just recently with UPS that luckily could avoid that. But we continue to see increasing rates and declining service levels. We're also seeing shortage in warehouse labor that all can affect that last mile. And this really creates this urgency to focus on last mile and to continuously come up with new ways, not just of fulfilling it, but then also to help companies to deal with that as they focus on the cost of the delivery and then how they can impact the customer experience. And that really has provided these different options, these different capabilities, both on the technology side, where we see new last mile, what I would call more solution providers from a pure optimization perspective. But then you see also very important, these new ways like FRAYT to bring new services to the market. And so companies understand that in order for them to have that flexibility, that have that, you mentioned visibility and variability, I would say velocity, and being able to react to all these new ways and all these challenges, they need to have a much more varied way of serving the customer. And that's where these platforms play such a big role. As we see the risk and the complexity increase, you want to make sure you don't put all your eggs in a basket. You have diversification. That's what these platforms provide, is new ways of doing things. So are there downsides of it? I would say there isn't necessarily one platform that can do it all. Like I said, there's so many different flavors of last mile, but we're seeing a lot of new ways to do things in a way that's very much in line with what the current needs are.
Well, speaking of those current needs, Bart, why do you think we've just been told that there's going to be a 30% increase in this market in just 2 years? Huge explosion. What are the factors that are causing that?
Well, it's the way we as consumers have come to think about delivery, but it's not just us. I mean, everything speeds up, even in business world, right? We're seeing a lot of more last mile deliveries. It used to be, let's say, retailers used to buy product like grocery retail in full truckloads a few times a week. Then they became every day, half truckloads. Then it became LTL. Now it's almost, I'm just going to order it in time. So that creates really what we would call in last mile, like something that needs to be delivered real time in very small quantities. So even on the business side, not just the consumer side, but on the business side, we're seeing this increasing growth with ever smaller quantities of products being ordered and in much faster cycles.
Speaking of increasing options, I wonder if Ryan can speak to the increasing complexity and size of carrier options out there and what that means to this. I mean, it just adds more complexity and more confusion as to who you should be working with. Is that the case, Ryan? Just more types of carriers, more types of drivers, more types of options?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of options to Bart's point. I mean, there really is specialization within the type of final mile delivery that you're doing. I mean, the factors that we see customers looking at daily are cost, obviously is going to be a significant factor. The reliability of the folks delivering the product, as well as the ability to scale up and scale down quickly, to Bart's point about the variability and the different size constraints as to how ordering may take place. Definitely all are factors that should be looked at, in addition to the specialization, right? Like there's companies that are great at 2-person final mile deliveries, or refrigerated, or airport, or dedicated runs. So I mean, I think there are tremendous amount of factors to consider when you're selecting a partner in this space.
Well, Ryan, how do some of these last mile carrier considerations differ for a 3PL or broker versus that of a direct shipper?
That's a great question. I mean, on the direct side, I really think it comes down to that cost, reliability, ability to scale, but also to my earlier point, the brand representation of the folks that are actually interacting with a shipper's customers at the delivery point. I mean, even Rob mentioned like we need to be careful about who gets sent into a home. So these are all definitely very serious considerations on a direct shipper standpoint. When we're working with intermediaries, it tends to be all those factors still exist. The additional complexities within an intermediary are less about specialization of like, I'm always going to be picking up from or delivering to an airport, so I need a TWIC and TSA certification. But when we're getting into intermediaries that are aggregating multiple shippers, demand and volume, there becomes use cases for a wide range of specialized services. And, that is one of the key differences we see sort of in the intermediary market. The other side that becomes increasingly important is just the ability to integrate. I'm still surprised at the number of folks that elect not to integrate in the short term, but making sure that you're choosing a provider that is capable of mapping their solution to your business versus rewriting your business to onboard a vendor are kind of the key differences I see between those two areas.
But measurement is so important, hard numbers and figuring out, whether your carriers are living up to their agreements and their standards. I mean, what kind of key metrics should shippers be using to monitor performance standards across their carrier network? Bart, maybe you have some insight here.
Sure, Bob. I mean, obviously across all shippers and across transportation, OTIF or on time in full has always been very important. We've also seen other things like if you have increased numbers of deliveries, can they actually guarantee the delivery? That's something we've seen with providers like UPS and FedEx, where they've actually only allowed certain percentages of the deliveries to be fulfilled. And they're saying, they actually have been known to fire customers. I mean, imagine that, a supplier firing their customer. So that becomes very important. But when we talk about last mile, and in many cases, we also look at the number of damages that occur, or, how do you reduce missed deliveries? Because, we're probably looking at somewhere around globally around $12 for a regular parcel delivery. And obviously, once you go to larger, you go to LTL, it's a lot more. And if you have a missed delivery, now you have to go back and redeliver. That even goes up. And then it's also the whole idea of returns for different reasons. And then if you're a retailer, then you're probably looking at two things that keep all these retailers up in sweat at night, which is net promoter scores and customer satisfaction score. Because in many cases, when it comes to last mile, the whole customer experience is that fulfillment. It is logistics. And so if you don't have a happy customer, that can really negatively impact your revenue. Now, the other side, if you have very happy customers, it can drive, and it will drive your revenue and obviously the how well your company does.
I would like to hear some of your favorite secrets out there to building a successful partnership with a last mile provider that shippers should know about. Let me start with Rob on that one. What do you have to share with us?
So, well, one real quick before I just want to touch on one thing that Bart mentioned, and this is, I'm at a partner carrier conference right now, actually, and one of the big initiatives that we're looking at this year is just reducing open boxes, right? And you talk about any reason for failed deliveries, right? There's a million of them of customer not home, wrong address, wouldn't fit. There's a million of them, right? One thing that we're just zeroing in on this year is just open top. And our goal is to reduce it by 1%. We believe if we can reduce it by 1%, there is, and I can't get into specific savings on this, but I will say it's significant savings, and that will not have to go then to an outlet. It won't have to be shipped to a different fulfillment center for an inspection or any kind of repair. And so I think, looking at these, and you're going through your selection and planning out for what you need, being able to really clearly identify what is your scope of work, what has to be done. I just believe that the best deals are those that two or three or multiple people, whatever parties are involved in it, come with specific objectives, and what you're trying to accomplish, and then you can kind of match up. If you don't know exactly what you need and you just want a good delivery and not necessarily understanding how to define that, you're going to get back bids or opportunities or partners that can do anything and can do everything. And, you're going to look at it and say, what's the difference between, $50 and $40? You're going to go with a $40 bid, right? Yeah. But if you can really scope in on that and understand what is the impact of a 3% return, cutting it down to a 2% return, or our network-wide open box tops is 1.37% for deliveries that go out and are opened, and then something happens, the customer ends up not being home or ends up not fitting or whatever. And so you think it'd be easy to look at that and say 1.37% is pretty acceptable. That's okay. We can live with that. But we think by just taking a few minutes to look at that differently and make sure there's a clear pathway, that there's a proper gas hookup, water hookup, electrical, that there's no, we don't have any certification issues, that we can actually reduce that 1.37% and get it down below 1%. And there's really, really incredible massive savings that is pretty amazing to capture. So, the more you can track those things and understand them, and then put those out into your either your SOPs or your scope of work as looking and vetting out different partners, I think is going to have a significant ROI.
Thanks, Rob. Ben, what about you? Secrets to a successful partnership?
I have to agree with Rob. I think it's about honesty and being forthright and addressing the issues up front that help to align all the parties around a common set of goals and metrics by which you'll measure those goals. So for us, it's oftentimes time in transit and then the cost to deliver to the customer's door. We find that when we come in and we can really partner with a director of operations or a VP of operations and define the savings that they're looking to unlock and the regions within which they want to diversify their carrier set, that's when we can have the most success.
Well, we're talking about partnerships here, about shippers and carriers, or shippers and their customers. What about partnerships between the actual providers? Bart, maybe you could weigh in on that.
Yeah, if the traditional providers typically don't work together, right? You're not going to see UPS and FedEx work together or with other companies. In some cases, they might acquire a company they're interested in. And I think that's a little bit the difference, Bob, with these new platforms. They know that they have a specific niche, but that their customer base needs a much broader platform. But since they're also technology-based, it allows them a much closer way that's technology enabled to work together. And so you see a lot of these companies, including the ones here on the call, that actually partner with each other. It's actually a good surprise to me as well, where sometimes I talk to different companies and I think, you're all in last mile. Are you competitors? And they go, no, we're actually partners. We work together, because it's not just what we do and how maybe we differentiate from these other companies, but how can we provide a much broader single customer experience to our shippers by working together, by collaborating, and then making it easier for the customer base to work with these companies without, saying, hey, you guys need to go figure out how to work together. So that's something that these platforms have in common, is how they view partnerships as an essential part, not just for operating their business, but also to providing a much better experience to their shippers.
Certainly, we could see shippers demanding that kind of cooperation for the best service, and carriers that are strong in various areas can focus on their individual strengths. That's a very good point. There's always the question, though, of reverse logistics. The stuff coming back the other way requires just as much of a focus on service, on collaboration, on partnership. And that is an area on which that a lot of companies or carriers and even retailers are falling down on right now. Rob, maybe you could address the impact of that right now. What do you see?
Well, I mean, again, I think it goes hand in hand with what Ben said, what Bart said. There's so much growth. There's so much opportunity. No one can capture and own all of that, right? So we have, our largest clients that we service right now, we would have more work than we could ever dream of if we took over 10% of their volume. It's unlikely, right? They need multiple providers, and as well as we need multiple different people to work with. So, when I think of competitors, I think of somebody that, I want to perform in a certain way, in the way we're tracking our metrics, and in that capacity, want to exceed and do better than them. But when I look at capabilities, there's so much more benefit of being able to partner with different people and understand who's strong in different things. We formed the National Home Delivery Association 11 years ago, when I think when a lot of people were really going through different struggles, didn't want to get in the same room with their competitors, right? They were all big competitors. And for a little bit, there was, I think, some questions of, well, why am I here? I've bid against business with that guy, or, it's a small niche industry. Maybe one person went to go work for a competitor, different company, and they kind of struggled to figure out how to collaborate. Over the last several years, I think we recognize there's so much more opportunity to look at these challenges and say, okay, disruption, what's going on legal front, what's going on with regulation, what's happening with insurance, what's happening with background checks. They're all the same issues that many of us are facing, and we want to solve them, right? If I can solve it and it benefits somebody else, it still benefits me, right? We all win together. And if somebody else can help with a reverse logistics solution, I mean, just as much, so much as I think e-commerce is going to continue to increase, so will that reverse logistics challenge, right? And the bigger the product, the more costly that is. I have, you can see in my background space here, a facility that we operate. This is in Nashville. And fortunately, all of that stuff is it's a cross dock. All of that is there less than 48 hours, right? And so we can set a time lapse up there for really even shorter than that, about a 36-hour period, where it's completely empty, and then the next load comes in, and then it's completely full and it's busting at the seams, and then within an hour of load out, it's empty again. And anything that happens, we had an electrical outage in a facility up in Columbus this last week. Electrical outage for just a couple of hours ended up shutting down the routes for a full day. Well, not only, a lot of people kind of tend to think, well, that's going to be a delay for those customers. Not going to get their delivery till the next day. Well, now our building it doesn't have room to receive the next day's shipments. And so a whole just chain of effects goes into place of what's going to happen with rescheduling and pushing those customers out, not just a day, but a lot of times, unfortunately, they're going to get pushed out, 10 days and further. Now add reverse logistics into that and trying to store, what was historically maybe, sub 5% of your products going to 7, 10, maybe higher. I know depending on the, product category. I've been in a lot of warehouse spaces where they're full. A space like this would be, a fraction of it is actually outbound, and then a bigger fraction of it is just product that no one knows what to do with and where to get it to actually process and handle it. So there's a big need for solutions there. But, and I think there's going to be a big opportunity for some companies, maybe some listeners here, to fill those needs on what the reverse logistics portion of it is. But first and foremost, I think all of us want to say, in particular retailers, is how do we minimize that from becoming a problem in the first place? How do we minimize, customers ordering the wrong color, the wrong size, right? We've all had those experiences where something shows up and I say, I love this couch, but I thought it was about 10 feet bigger. I didn't realize it was this big, and so those are the problems I think that with proper technology and proper customer experience, if you make it easy and easy enough to understand, order, and vet, we can get it done right the first time.
Peak season is almost upon us, the time when expectations rise and performance falls. I'm wondering, Ben, maybe you could give us an idea of what do you think brands should be considering in this area going into peak season?
Yeah, it's not just expectations that are rising, it's also costs. So,
right.
I would point everybody to an important date on the calendar, which is October 2nd. So October 2nd is less than 2 weeks away, and that's the date that FedEx holiday surcharges hits. So if you use FedEx home delivery, if you use FedEx Ground, FedEx Express, you should expect a nearly $7 per parcel charge on every single one of your parcels. And I would venture a guess that most brands, if they expect holiday surcharges, they forget that it starts now in early October. And that's even if they expect the surcharge. Many of them don't even see it until they watch their checking account just get smaller and smaller each week. So I would say, above all else, just be prepared. Look at the dates that each carrier is going to assess their holiday surcharges. Get into the numbers. Sit down with your operations teams. Get ready for those extra costs and adjust as appropriate, right? Like maybe you need to change your free shipping threshold. Maybe you need to pass on a bit of the cost, or maybe you need to take quick action to diversify your carrier set. So you're sending some of that volume to carriers that don't charge holiday surcharges or don't charge as high of a holiday surcharge. But above all else, just get into the numbers and do the work.
Ryan, how do you freight adjust to peak seasons, and how do you expect to be dealing with the upcoming one? What's your recommendation to your customers?
For sure. So I'm definitely aligned to Ben's point on working through the data and sort of being prepared as to what's to come. Additionally, so for freight, we're expecting a big bump in for the holidays. A lot of it comes down to the flexibility and the speed of deliveries and agility. Having no assets puts us in a good position to be able to recover from other providers that may not be able to fulfill due to holiday spike. So the benefit of not having assets and leveraging the gig economy in order to make these deliveries helps us to remain agile. And but in terms of the preparation, I totally agree with Ben. It really comes down to understanding the data and understanding the expectations and building a business plan around that that's suitable for your business and your customers.
I guess it's also kind of the conventional wisdom these days that B2C quality of final mile is generally exceeded that of service quality of B2B. Would you say, maybe I could ask you, Ryan, is that in fact the case that B2B is playing catch up with B2C in terms of final mile service excellence, or is that not necessarily the case?
I think so I would agree because of the complexities that come with B2C. We're years into many of the different requirements that a home creates and the personal relationship the receiver has with their home, and the complexities as to how homes are constructed. From a B2C standpoint, there's many less variables that we're dealing with. So is there the ability to leverage some of the tools that we've built and technology that's been built over time to optimize B2C delivery to have the same level of uniqueness? I think the answer is yes.
At this point, I'd like to bring the audience in, the audience question and answer portion of our discussion. And audience members, we do have some questions to answer already, but even as we are doing that, you are encouraged to continue to submit your questions through that Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to as many of those as we can, time permitting. So I'm wondering, okay, here's a question asking, would you suggest outsourcing all of your fulfillment to one provider, or using multiple solutions to manage different areas with different needs? I mean, after all, this whole topic of this conversation is fleet diversification, right? What approach has been most effective in your experience? Bart, why don't you take that?
Yeah, if you look at it from a traditional last mile perspective, even there, if you're just doing small parcel, even then we're seeing companies continue to diversify because of the risk they've seen with providers, either with potential strikes or labor issues in the warehouse, or issues around service levels and guarantees, or even cost. So even if you're just doing one thing, which is small parcel, you still have to diversify. Now, if you're doing kind of everything in the gambit, which is I'm shipping to businesses, I'm shipping to consumers, I'm doing small parcels, but I also have larger parcels and maybe even refrigerated product, there's no other option than to diversify and use multiple platforms. But I would say look at it as an ecosystem. So talk to your vendors or your partners So if you're working with a company, ask them, who do you partner with for these other parts? Because what you'll see, especially with the newer platforms, as I mentioned before, they have more of that partnership approach, an ecosystem approach. That is something that we're seeing across logistics the last few years, is ecosystems. And so we have, and we are continuing to build last mile ecosystems. So yes, diversify, but still do it in a controlled way rather than just trying to grow that diversification kind of out of control, because the more vendors you need to control, the more work that is for you if you don't do it the right way.
Always a balance. Yeah, good answer. This questioner is saying our company is slow to accept new ways of doing things. That's a rare thing. How can we make the case for updating the mindset and technology of our organization to adopt some of these advances in last mile operations? And then also, what has been your experience with a successful implementation? Ben, you want to start with that one? Kind of a two-part question.
Yeah. So to be really blunt, like the way that we tackle this question as a Tusk team is we lead with cost savings. Like that's kind of what gets the foot in the door. And if I were an operator, like that's what I would present first to my chain of command, would be just the raw numbers, showing them exactly the savings that they should expect if I onboarded a given vendor. But beyond that cost savings alone, I would emphasize two really important things. The first is highlight the risk. With any new vendor, there is risk. Address that risk in a very forthright way with your chain of command, but then show how this vendor is not only going to address that risk, but exceed expectations around things like service and quality, and give specific examples that address the specific risk that you highlighted. So in the final mile parcel space, it's often things like, I don't want to onboard a network of regionals like Tusk because I'll have to go to every regional and handle customer support issues. Well, the way that we address that as Tusk is we say, no, you don't need to go to every carrier. You just come to Tusk. Tusk handles that risk suitably well for your organization. So lead with the cost savings, address the risk up front, and then show how the vendor can not only address the risk, but go beyond expectations around whatever your chain of command is most worried about.
It's interesting how the word risk has become so much a part of our conversation in these last few years when it wasn't before. So that's a great perspective. Rob, what do you think? Making the case for updating, getting companies to accept new ways of doing things.
So 2 weeks ago, I would have put all my stock into Aaron Rodgers. Right?
Aaron no.
He's not playing this year.
Apparently his team did too, but
yeah, his team did too.
Yeah.
You also can't have 15 quarterbacks, right? But you have to kind of anticipate and plan for disruption's going to happen and it's going to occur, right? Just like this whole 80-20 rule, right? 80% of what you're doing in your company might be really good. 20% of it might be not so great, needs to be improved upon. Which 20% is it? And how do you identify it? You don't necessarily know exactly. You might have some pretty good indicators, but in a lot of scenarios, you may not know where that's going to come from. So, I agree. I think you have to diversify, but at the same time, I'll challenge us just a little bit, because I do get encountered with some people that don't have a lot of volume, and if you're sending in 10 deliveries into the state of Texas, you're not going to get 10 different providers. So I think you have to evaluate and vet out and understand, like, where is that coming from? What is a plan B? What is a plan C? Logistics is disruption. No matter what, you just anticipate. They say it's like riding a bicycle, right? If the bicycle only had one wheel and it was flat and it was on fire. So it's going to come. Those challenges are going to come, but when they do come up, and when when your biggest partner declares bankruptcy and can't service anymore, just because there's growth doesn't mean that probably has even more challenges associated with it, with companies that are not able to adapt and be prepared for that. So I know there's a lot of companies out there that are legacy companies, legacy retailers that do some really, really good things, and there's a tendency not to want to change some of those things. And some of that's okay. Some of that you have to identify what things are working well and understand where you can really take some calculated, I don't want to call them bets, I guess, but some calculated decisions to test out some things that might be better solutions for what's happening down the road. And a small hiccup now is going to be much more advantageous than being forced to make a decision and put the wrong person out on the field when you're not prepared to do it.
There are really an amazing amount of potential metaphorical Achilles tears in the facility to be looking out for. Okay, this questioner wants to know, when using a tech platform, how can you have oversight to ensure quality and customer satisfaction when it seems like the company is several layers removed from the carrier? Ryan, how does FRAYT manage carrier performance and customer satisfaction?
Yeah, great question. We never want to be the Zach Wilson of final mile. We prefer to be more in the Aaron Rodgers category. So, so we have a company value that transparency cultivates trust. We have a belief internally that, reliability and expectation setting on the front end builds the foundation to have a successful relationship. So first and foremost, we tend to pass on a lot of opportunities that we don't believe we are the best fit for, as opposed to wasting the time of all parties involved. Secondly, I think part of that foundation is building a really strong team. So of our driver network, which are gig economy, we have the most stringent qualification processes to get them involved. So we know that we have a team that we can count on to support our end customer. Beyond that, we leverage the technology and star rating system within our application to basically increase or decrease the amount of opportunities that drivers would get based on their performance and the direct feedback from the shipper. And then finally, we take feedback, or excuse me, we align on KPIs with a customer. One of the earlier comments around KPIs in scoping and discovery is that language is a funny thing. Like, on time, is it that it fits into a delivery window? Is it that it was within 15 minutes of that delivery window? We have our own definition, but that matters much less than what the customer's definition of that is. So I think by aligning on KPIs, leveraging tech to promote top performers and reduce volume for drivers that are not satisfactory for our customers' demands, that helps us to manage that process and to ensure that we do have direct line of sight as to the overall performance of the network.
Bart, could you perhaps take a minute to kind of summarize and give us our marching orders for companies that want to look at this whole issue of carrier diversification and excellence in last mile delivery?
I'm going to keep it very simple, Bob. We know last mile has already changed. It's going to continue to change. I'll give you a little sneak peek. It's not going to become less complex. It's only going to become more complex. So keep an open mind, just as you're looking to how do we serve our customers better? Look at these platforms, look at how they can make your organization provide you with better velocity, which again, through visibility will reduce variability and risk, will help you reduce cost, will help you to increase your revenue, and at the end of the day, happier customers. So the goal is, really to keep an open mind and look at these options. But again, do your homework, look at what these options are, what specific areas of last mile they cover, and then, as I mentioned before, look at it from an ecosystem perspective. And I think anyone, and I've seen it already happening with the more performing customer base out there, the shippers, the good manufacturers, the good retailers, they've already started doing this. And you can talk to a lot of those as reference customers. They've seen huge impacts of that on their supply chains and on their customer supply chains.
Great. Well, sad to say, we're just about out of time. We really only have time for one more question, and I'm going to direct it to Ryan. How long does it take to get up and running on FRAYT? And where should we go to get started diversifying our fleets with FRAYT owner-operator drivers?
Very exciting question, Bob. Everybody is welcome at FRAYT.com. It's fast and easy to sign up. You can be booking your first delivery within 5 minutes. I'd like to highlight that we were just named as a top 100 FreightWaves freight tech company, and leveraging our platform, you'll be able to get the cost-effective benefits of leveraging the gig economy while also getting the reliability and professionalism of a traditional carrier. So feel free to head on over, and thanks for watching.
Great. Yes, unfortunately, we are now out of time, and any audience questions that we were unable to address for time considerations, I'm sure our speakers would only be too happy to address them offline. So I want to thank them all. I want to thank Ben Emmerich and Bart DeMunk and Rob Davis and Ryan Sullivan for a great presentation. And I want to mention a special bonus offer too. To get your first 3 deliveries free from FRAYT, each one up to $100 in value, go to FRAYT.com, and in the shipper sign-up form, enter the promo code FIRST3FREE. That's first numeral 3 free for new customer signups. So again, everybody, thanks very much for a great presentation. Audience, thank you for your attendance and your great questions. Everybody, best of luck. Have a great day.